said, look, one must be realistic. South Korea is a fact of life. You can't deny that. And if you want a peace treaty, of course South Korea has to participate. In one way and the other, that will have to be clarified. And it was in the light of this that we finally agreed, first in North Korea, then in South Korea, that such discrete contacts would be established in order to clarify these aspects.
And those discrete contacts would take place here?
My impression, may I just say, my impression is that the negative attitude of Pyongyang in regard to the participation of South Korea in such talks is not the last words they said. That was my impression from the talks I had with their top leaders.
What is China doing to pressure or encourage the North Koreans to be more cooperative?
Well,
or do you even buy that assumption?
Yeah.
That there is? Do you even accept that assumption that the Chinese are interested in peace on the Korean Peninsula?
I have this impression, especially in the light of the recent developments. I have this impression. In fact, when I asked them about their relations, they said we have excellent relations with China, and of course also very good relations with the Soviet Union. So they were very careful in balancing this. But I think the Chinese influence is considerable.
Do you think that do you agree with the assumption that the three major powers, the Soviet Union, the United States, and China, all have a vested interest in maintaining a stable Korean Peninsula and might be willing to lend their diplomatic weight to some sort of an agreement on the peninsula? Do you think there is genuine enthusiasm on the part of those three powers for a stable situation?
That's my impression, yeah. Right now, where there is so much trouble nearby, I think that none of them is really interested to create an additional trouble spot. Although I must say that South Korea continues to be extremely suspicious about the North Korean intentions. I mean, we could hear that they were also somewhat uneasy. Not the leadership. Talks with Park Chung-hee went excellent and in a very good atmosphere. Like in fact in the North. You see, in the North I had first a problem of suspicion. I had some problems to get this visit underway, because first there were hesitations. They didn't want to have it together with the South. Sort of said that we are certainly welcome, but maybe separate visits, etc. So I inserted then the Japanese visit, and so we say exactly to separate the two things. But then I must say, and I think I consider this also an achievement. Please don't misunderstand me. I don't want to exaggerate, but I think we were, for the first time, we were able, the United Nations, to, I think, to convince the North Koreans that we are trying to be honest markers. That not that because of the fact that the UN was involved in the
excuse me, trying to be honest
markers. That I want to be an honest marker between the two Koreas. Broker, yeah, honest broker. Sorry, honest broker, of course. An honest mediator, that I want to help them, that I have no political interest to favor one or the other, that they could rely on our objectivity. Although at the beginning it was not easy to bring my message to them, it worked, because the whole visit then took place in an extremely good atmosphere, and I even felt, you were with me, one could even feel how the ice was broken and how they then went out of their way to make it easy for us to do our job. So I think this is something positive, because how can you expect the solution of that awkward problem as long as you don't create a minimum of confidence and having some neutral factor who can try his hand.
But given the years of suspicion and mistrust, given the strength of the two leaders, Park Chung-hee and Kim Il-sung, given the difficulty in even solving a problem like divided families, is there room for optimism that
Well,
I mean, we all know that a long journey starts with a single step, but is this journey really so long that we shouldn't be optimistic about?
I think there is no reason to be over-optimistic. I mean, we have to be realistic, and I'm the first one to be realistic. But we must make a beginning. If we just lean back and say, well, there is no chance, too much suspicion on both sides, it will never work, then you can't solve a problem. One must make a beginning, and the beginning is to create first a climate of confidence, or a minimum of confidence, and to make the first step. And the first step, in my opinion, was to open channels of communication, because they don't have these contacts. And I can tell you now, right after my return, the two ambassadors are pressing me even to establish these contacts in a very constructive way. And I had already my talks with both of them. So there is this channel starts to work. Whether it will produce progress, I can't tell you. I have to wait and see. But at any rate,
you brought North Korea out of this isolation. I mean, they've been cut off for so long. And if they're brought back into the main diplomatic stream,
and I think it is in the interest of South Korea too, to bring back North Korea in the mainstream of international affairs, to get them out of the complete isolation, is in the interest of South Korea. Although, I have to say, in the press, in the media, during my visit, I noticed in the editorials, etc., well, one should be very careful, and maybe the Secretary General is unrealistic if he expects that things will change, etc.
All the Korean papers run these continuing series about North Korean espionage.
Yeah, the tunnel business and all this.
Kim Il-sung indoctrinating children at nursery schools, and
Yes.
but they don't know anything about North Korea at all. They were always asking the Secretary General, and
They were very grateful for the information they got.
How is
from me.
Pyongyang? What are they like? What do they look like? I mean, they don't know.
Do the North Koreans ask the same question about the South?
No.
I don't think so.
No.
I
Not
think
at all.
they see too much of what's happening down there. They don't like to get into those comparison games.
I'd like to ask you about Russia and China. The Soviet Union has proposed that Moscow and Peking start talking about the possibility of normalizing diplomatic relations between the two countries. And it now appears as if Peking may be receptive to that idea. Is that something you talked about?
To the talks.
Or at least to the talks. Is that something you discussed when you were in Peking?
No, I did not discuss that, but I must tell you that it was not my impression in Peking that there is a sort of Tau weather. You call it Tau? If the ice is melting, what is the expression? If the ice is melting,
The
Thaw,
The
yes.
thaw.
the thaw, yeah, that's what I was right. The thaw. I didn't notice anything of this kind when I was in Peking. It was, on the contrary, a very tough position. And when I explained this, yes, they have to wait. When I explained this to my interlocutors in Moscow, they just said, well, we are aware of this, but...
Did you see any signs of
we
the thaw
can't
in Moscow
accept it.
toward the Chinese?
Well, as you see from the offer they have made, I think they are interested in opening a dialogue with China. We have now to wait what the reaction in Peking will be. I don't really know. This is something new, but we didn't discuss it, so I can't really give you
On a more general level, and we've taken too much of your time already, but I do want to ask if you see this trip as the beginning of a new role for the Secretary General, or is this the continuation of? Is it very much in the trend of the
No,
office?
it's not in the trend of the previous approach I had to my office. It's a new approach. I do not hesitate to say this. And as I did it, although it was a tremendous strain, I must say, he was with me. It was an enormous physical and nervous
And he's
strain.
much older than you are, so it's...
He's much younger, he can...
Oh,
Well, after this trip,
Well,
I think the secretary was the only one who put up with everything.
Don't forget, I'm over 60. So, but anyway, we all survived, and I don't regret it for a minute to have made the effort. It was, in my opinion, worse to make the trip. I never expected miracle solutions, but it was and I tell you something, the reason why I did it and why I have this more direct approach now is simply that I came to the conclusion that the United Nations is so often in deadlocked, the Security Council especially, because of the veto and because of the charter which gives the Council, which foresees so many limitations for the Council that very often the Council is paralyzed. And I think I consider it my duty to try to fill the gap, because the Secretary General is one of the main organs of the 5 main organs of the United Nations under the Charter. And I don't need a special mandate. It is better to have it, but if not, I can act on my own behalf in my capacity as Secretary General. And this is a typical case where I came to the conclusion that I should go there, I should try to see what I can do in order to fill a gap, as I said at the beginning. So it is a new approach, it is a more direct approach, let's say a more aggressive approach to my office. But after so many years in this function, I came to the conclusion that this is necessary. This is absolutely necessary. I'm fully aware of my limits. I know
it's going to be a more controversial role.
Certainly, I cannot make everybody happy, as you can fully imagine. But I do what I consider is right and necessary, and whether the governments like it or not, I really cannot take that too much into account. For me, the guideline is it in the interest of the solution of a problem or not? And if I come to the conclusion that it could be, I do it. And that was the basis on which I made this trip. And this is only the beginning, I can tell you.
What's next? Tell us where you go next.
This is what this new method I shall apply also to other areas of crisis. I don't have to tell you where the crises are. Middle East, Southern Africa, Cyprus. You saw that I didn't, although it was a great risk to go to Cyprus for this little summit meeting with Cipriano and English, but it worked. It worked. I mean, after 2 days of very painful negotiations, we achieved agreement on a 10-point program for the resumption of the intercommunal talks. You shouldn't see Cyprus only as a little island in the eastern Mediterranean. It's very important for the grand design, for the great design of world politics, because you have the Turkish aspect, the American interests, the NATO interests in Turkey. So Cyprus is interrelated with many other more important problems. I mean, if I say more important problems as far as international politics is concerned. Therefore, here again, I thought that it is my duty to go there, to make an effort, even if the outlook was very gloomy. But it worked, and on the 15th, in 2 weeks' time, we start a new round of intercommunal talks.
And where's the next trip?
I don't know. I have to play it by ear. I have to see how things develop in those areas of crisis, in Africa, Middle East, etc. But as far as the Middle East is concerned, believe me, sooner or later the matter will come back to the United Nations. No doubt in my mind about this. To get the comprehensive Middle East settlement, you have to do this. You have to bring all the parties back in the negotiating process again, and that can only be done within the framework of the United Nations.
May I ask one more question, and if you like, I would turn off the machine. I'd like your personal assessments of some of the leaders you saw, and this may not be a proper question for a published interview.
If you turn it
Okay.
off, then
At this time. All right, Barry? Hello, Barry?
Yeah.
Okay, I think through the auspices of the Overseas Department on the 5th floor, we got a machine that's working, so why don't we try it now?
Okay. Should I give you a test?
Yeah, just give me a test and I'll do a quick check on it and then we'll take it.
Foreign/overseas, Kunming, Kunming, came.
Okay,
China.
stop there.